Welcome to Candid Catholic Convos, a program brought to you by the Catholic Diocese of Harrisburg. Our mission is to humanize the Church and help you to grow in your faith, love, and understanding. I'm your host, Rachel Trochet, a cradle Catholic who's only human and struggled with faith on more than one occasion. Each week, you'll hear engaging, down-to-earth interviews and actionable strategies you can implement into your life with ease to help you grow closer to God. If you're ready to open your heart and step fully into the person God created you to be, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Candid Catholic Convos. Well, we've made it. January and February felt like an entire year in and of themselves, and we can see the light at the end of the tunnel leading into March. Spring is coming, folks, which means Easter is right around the corner, which means so is Lent. If you're listening to us live, it's the last weekend of February, and March 2nd is this coming Wednesday, which makes it Ash Wednesday in the Catholic faith. And for the next 40 days, we prepare to celebrate Jesus' resurrection at Easter. Growing up, the idea of Lent was always met with groans. I never liked the idea of giving something up. And after a while, pizza or fish sticks on Fridays got really boring. Easter was always my favorite. But leading up to Easter, no thanks. I think there's a lot that's misunderstood about Lent, especially from someone on the outside looking in. It just seems like a bunch of rules. Can't do this, can't do that. The joke I always hear around Lent is, oh, this year I'm giving up things. Everyone seems to know about abstaining from meat on Fridays and the personal sacrificing of certain things. What they may not know is why we are called to fast and practice self-discipline during this time. So let's talk about it. For all of my fellow number nerds out there, numbers have a lot of significance in the Bible. For instance, the number 40 is repeated throughout the Bible, usually signifying spiritual testing and trials, like the 40 days of rain with Noah, or Jesus' 40 days of fasting in the wilderness and the temptation that followed, or even the 40 years the Israelites spent wandering in the wilderness after Exodus from Egypt. As I've mentioned before, God likes to use our time spent waiting, and 40 days, or 40 years, is quite a long time to wait. During that time of waiting, that time of preparation, He teaches us to trust Him and to continue showing up, to choose good even when it's not easy. In the Bible, at the end of all of those trials, those who trusted God were rewarded. The rain stopped and a rainbow appeared. The Israelites were delivered to the promised land. And after turning down all of the devil's empty promises, Jesus was ministered to by the angels. As I've gotten older, I've recognized the significance of the sacrifice. I mean, Jesus gave up His life. The least I can do is stop drinking soda and refrain from eating meat on Fridays. Now I am interested in how I can effectively use this time spent waiting to actually grow closer to God. Today, we're going to dive deep into the topic of Lent and how we can make the most of these upcoming 40 days. So I asked Father Paul Clark of St. Matthew Parish in Dauphin to help me make sense of some of our traditions and give us some best practices for a fruitful 40 days. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk to you. Could you tell me a little bit about yourself and where you're from?
Sure, Rachel. Thank you for having me. So I am Father Paul Clark. I am the Judicial Vicar of the Diocese of Harrisburg here in central Pennsylvania. I oversee the work and the ministry of our diocesan tribunal that deals not just with annulments, but is really the canonical arm for the diocese. So I'm a canon lawyer. I was ordained for this diocese in 2003, or ordained a deacon in 2002 by Bishop Nicholas Datillo, then ordained a priest by Bishop David Zubik, because Bishop Datillo was ill at the time. So Bishop Zubik is now the Bishop of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but he was at the time in 2003 auxiliary and a friend of Bishop Datillo. So I've been a priest of this diocese since 2003, and I currently am the judicial vicar, and I'm also a pastor. So I'm pastor of St. Matthew Parish in Dolphin, which is a small little parish between the mountains, going out 322 toward State College, just past Linglestown Road, Fishing Creek. The next exit is Dolphin Borough, and I'm about a mile up the creek. And I've been pastor at St. Matthew's, a wonderful parish with wonderful parishioners. If you're listening, hello. I guess I've been pastor for over 10 years, but won't remind the bishop of that because I'm perfectly fine staying there for another 10 years.
Right.
In addition to being judicial vicar and pastor, I am also the bishop's liaison to the St. Thomas More Society, which is that group of Catholic lawyers and judges and also law students and those in the law profession. And so the liaison, and there's kind of their spiritual advisor and director. So I have a number of hats.
I would say so. You're pretty busy. That's amazing. So thank you for carving out some time for us.
I'm glad to.
So as you know, Lent is coming up.
Yeah.
Could you talk to me a little bit about what is Lent and why Catholics observe it?
I think just in a general way, not necessarily defining it in an official way. I think for me, I think of Lent as a more intense journeying with Jesus, and journeying with Jesus to the cross, journeying with Jesus through his passion, and then ultimately to the Paschal mystery, to the Easter event. But it's journeying with Jesus through sacrifice. It is realizing that Christ has carried his cross for us and has made the ultimate sacrifice, giving his life for the salvation of souls and to open the gates of heaven. So I think Lent is, the church says sometimes it's our retreat, and it's a time to really, through sacrifice, to deepen our love and our friendship with the one who has saved us. Now, I know the Catechism, gives a kind of an official definition of what days of penance are all about. And certainly, Lent is a penitential season. It's a more intense penitential season. The Catechism says, Article 1438, the seasons and days of penance in the course of the liturgical year, Lent, specifically, are intense moments of the church's penitential practice. And penance is sacrifice, right? Which is difficult for us to do these days. We don't want to sacrifice much of anything. Penance is sometimes a bad word. The Catechism goes on to say, these times are particularly appropriate for spiritual exercises, penitential liturgies, pilgrimages as signs of penance, voluntary self-denial, such as fasting and almsgiving, and charity, fraternal sharing through charitable works and missionary works. So it's a very beautiful time, and I think it's a time that we need to kind of prepare for now. So Lent starts Ash Wednesday, and it ends liturgically. It ends as far as the season on Holy Thursday, but the days of fasting continue until Holy Saturday. So Lent ends officially Holy Thursday, but the fasting goes on till Holy Saturday, which is the celebration of the resurrection of Christ and the great Easter Vigil. That's why a lot of times, Catholics after the Easter Vigil, they'll say, okay, well, the fast has ended, and I can eat candy and I can eat those things and enjoy those things that I perhaps gave up. I think that, just Lent is a special time of grace that we need to know what we're going to do before we do it, before it comes upon us so fast. I don't know if you watch Shark Tank. I watch it and I really like it. I get a kick out of those sharks, and I think that it's amazing how much people have sacrificed to get their business up and running and to live out their dream, and just to see them often flourish and become millionaires. This is kind of cool. But, there's the one shark that is kind of the one that's disliked most among all of them that have appeared. And that's Mr. Wonderful, right? Kevin O'Leary. At the end, like when the person has multiple offers and they're kind of him-hawing about, what offer to take, to take, Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, always says, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And that's kind of the words I hear before Lent is, what are you going to do? Or maybe better put, what are you not going to do? Because you shouldn't be doing it. So we have to prepare. What is my Lent going to look like? Because if you don't, and Ash Wednesday comes, then it's Thursday and Friday, and we're already in the Lenten season. So you got to think and pray about it. How am I going to journey with Christ? How am I going to, with God's grace, draw closer to Jesus in this time of retreat, in this time of sacrifice?
Right. So you touched on this a little bit, but can you explain to me a little bit how this period of preparation is different from the season of preparation in Advent? You mentioned it's a penitential season. Can you elaborate on that for me?
Yeah, it's interesting that I think the origin certainly of this season is biblical. We see Jesus after his baptism, and as he begins his public ministry, he goes into the desert for 40 days. He's tempted by Satan. And so Lent is like kind of like that. It's a pattern. It's following the pattern of Jesus. And through drawing ourselves by God's grace closer to Jesus, Lent is a time of purging evil from us, or vice, purging those things that aren't of God. So I think that's the origins of Lent is Jesus's temptations in the desert, his time spent in the desert as he's preparing for ministry. And the early church certainly had too a period of fasting before Easter. So I think that's where, also the early church shows, and we're not sure that it was actually 40 days, but by the time of Nicaea, and probably like around St. Athanasius's time, St. Athanasius in 339, I think, says that the whole world, meaning like the whole church, the church throughout the world as he knew it, fasted for 40 days, and it was a mandatory thing. Lent is more of a penitential season. It's interesting that the code, canon lawyer, as I said in the introduction, but the code says that in canon 1250 that the penitential times and seasons are the following, and it says Lent and every Friday. Interesting, it doesn't say Advent. And the Catechism echoes that. In the article that I just mentioned in 1438, in parentheses, it says, Lent and each Friday. Advent is more of anticipating, waiting patiently for the first coming of the Lord, the celebration of the Lord's birth, which we now liturgically call Christmas. I think that it is a time of prayer. We have the three tenets or disciplines of Lent are, prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And I think Advent, in a particular way, I think we're called to focus on that prayer. But it's not really a penitential season. It has penitential overtones. I mean, we should go to the sacrament of penance, before Christmas. But, we're not mandated to do it like we are like an Easter duty. I think it's less penitential. It's less intense. Lent is a time of penance through sacrifice. So I think they have a very different character. And I think even the church, through the catechism and the law of the church, show that to us. Lent is something that from its origins, it has developed. I don't think in the beginning it was always 40 days, but it has developed into kind of an official penitential season that we are called to enter into and not really take lightly. This world is full of pleasures and we partake of them all the time. There is as Ecclesiastes, right? There is a time, to celebrate, and there's a time for sorrow. And I think Lent is not a time that we're necessarily sorrowful, because there can be joy in Lent, but it is a time to kind of step back and be sorry for our sins and allow God to dwell on us more deeply.
So we talked a little bit about how Catholics observe Lent through prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. We talked about this in my last podcast episode about prayer. Can you expand a little on fasting, what fasting is and what almsgiving is? Yeah,
I think, fasting, we generally think of, or we're gonna fast from food. And of course we are called to do that on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday are strict days of fasting. And then, every Friday in Lent is a time of abstinence from meat, unless we're over 62, I guess the number is. But I think that that fasting reminds us of that we should have an ultimate hunger for God, and we don't like to go without food. We're a culture of convenience and instant gratification. We have drive up at McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts, and we kind of get what we want. But that fasting, that going without food or without drink, and especially the food or drink that we most enjoy, reminds us of kind of what's most important. We're mind, body, and soul. For the body, we need nourishment and we need to eat. And it's good that we eat those things and drink those things we enjoy, not in excess, hopefully, but in moderation. But when we do without those, when we fast from those things, it reminds us that we are also soul, and that we can fill our bodies with the goodness of God in other ways, and that's kind of a, good segue into prayer. But, fasting also could be in some of the things that we, give up. Like, I'm going to fast from, maybe have a little bit of a potty mouth, or, maybe I'm kind of quick to use the Lord's name in vain, and I need to fast from that. St. Paul says that there's no name on heaven, in heaven or on earth or above earth or under the earth by which we are saved, and maybe fast from the times that, you're very kind of discouraging person, or maybe you are quick to put somebody down. Well, fast from that. Rather, be quick to compliment them. Be quick to encourage them and to support them. So I don't think that necessarily, other than what the church, by her law, says that we are to fast and abstain from. I think that we can fast and abstain from things that are sinful in our life. It could be a particular sin that it was really difficult for us to give up, but this is the time to do it. It's that first reading from Isaiah that we hear again every Ash Wednesday is, now is the appointed time, blow the trumpet, prepare the fast. This is the acceptable time. And it is a time of grace. So I think the Lord, we ask the Lord to pour out this in this time, this grace upon us, that we really can and discipline ourselves, and to give up maybe a particular sin that seems to possess us. All sin is demonic. All sin is kind of a form of mini possession, but God's grace can, in Christ, conquer that. We can't do it alone, but think of in Lent, I'm going to really make a concerted effort using God's grace to fast from this particular vice or sin of mine. And in those 40 days, you'd be surprised that you can carry it on because you've been disciplined after. It's like kind of like training the soul. Athletes train their body, and you go to the gym and you can only do so many pull-ups, a couple. But after 40 days, if you were preparing your body for an athletic event or just to be more in shape, you're going to find yourself at the end of that time being able to do 3 times or 4 times the number of push-ups or pull-ups that you did because you trained. I think in many ways, Lent is that time of spiritual training and discipline that can extend beyond just, the 40 days that the church calls us to, this time of, more intense penitential practice. But it's tough. Fasting is tough. I don't like to be hungry. And when we talk about fasting from food, I get grumpy. I know myself.
Angry. Definitely
absolutely.
Get angry.
And I have to guard against that. And especially coffee. I'm an addict. I probably drink at least a pot of coffee a day.
I am right there with you. I have 3 little boys, so I am constantly drinking coffee.
Yeah. So giving up something that's easy, like I'm kind of a bad Catholic. I don't like seafood. I don't like fish. So in many ways, Friday is difficult for me because what am I going to eat? But if I were to give up coffee or ice cream, my parishioners know that Turkey Hill chocolate peanut butter ice cream is like my favorite. It's in the freezer perpetually. So to give that up, yes, or potatoes. So I'm praying about this. What now? Do I want to give up all those things that I enjoy? Probably not, because then it's so difficult. It should be difficult, but it has to be reasonable that you're going to be able to do it. Again, Mr. Wonderful, what are you going to do? Well, something that, it's going to be tough, but with God's grace, I'm going to be able to do it. And if you do, if you do drop the ball, if you do fall, and you eat something or do something that you gave up, then I think the devil tempts us. Well, that you already, this was 40 days, and day 3 you already did this, or you already ate this. And we have a tendency to say, oh, well, then I just forget about it. No, we have to continue on. There's a couple of really great quotes that I found on fasting. And one is Thomas Aquinas. He says, fasting is directed to 2 things: the deletion of sin and the raising of the mind to heavenly things. John Chrysostom says, fasting of the body is food for the soul. Fasting of the body is food for the soul. Finally, Flannery O'Connor says, I do not know you, God, because I am in the way. Please help me push myself aside. So I think Lent is a time of, getting to know God better. We have to get out of the way. And I think through sacrifice like fasting, it helps us to get out of the way and let God fill us with those things that he wants to fill us with.
What about something like almsgiving? What is that? How does that pertain to our Lenten observance?
Yeah, I think it's a time of, charity, which again is getting out of the way and taking care of another. And that charity helps us to be more like God. God, St. John says, God is love. When we love, my parishioners are probably tired of hearing me say this, but we participate in the divine. We are like God when we love, especially in a selfless way. When we're giving something and we don't expect anything in return. If we get something in return, fine, but that we expect nothing. So I think that almsgiving is a time to go closer to God, because we are more like God, and realizing that there are legitimate needs out there to help others. It's a very beautiful time to give. I think Advent shares this in terms of almsgiving. We think of that in Advent. Christmas is giving of oneself because God gave the world the greatest gift that he could give us, and that is Jesus. So I think it's a time to come out of ourselves, and it's part of the sacrifice that we sometimes have to dig deep, or should dig deep. A lot of times I think in Lent, almsgiving is not giving where it's kind of easy, but giving where it is sacrificial. The Diocese annual campaign, sometimes we have to, dig deep and see all the good things that benefit, and all the people that benefit from that campaign. If we can give more than, $50 or $10, then we should give, because then it's truly sacrifice. So we give off of our surplus. What kind of really merit is that? So I think charity is a good tenet in this season, that we are more like God, and also I think in charity we make those sacrifices.
The big question at the beginning of Lent is always, what are you going to give up for Lent? Since Lent requires fasting of us, how do you know what to give up? How do you know what to fast from?
I think the church tells us that we do have to. Fasting and abstinence are different. Abstaining from meat, of course, those days, Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, and abstaining from meat every Friday in Lent. Unless sometimes there's a solemnity on Fridays, right, where it's the solemnity of St. Joseph. And I don't think this Lent, but if it's a solemnity, then we are dispensed from that fasting and abstinence. But so abstinence in terms of meat, we're required. But yeah, like what should we fast from? I think again, something that we really like, something that is going to be difficult to do. If it is it doesn't have to be a food or a drink, but it could be a certain vice or a certain sin or a certain habit. But I think we have to really pray about it. We have to ask the Holy Spirit, what is it that is going to help me to deny myself? Jesus says, deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me. And so this is a time to follow Jesus. Through sacrifice and through giving up. So what is it? Come, Holy Spirit, and fill my heart, fill my mind. What is it that I give up that will better discipline my soul? I think for each person it's different. And a lot of people they're giving up candy, but okay, that's okay if that's difficult for you, and it is. People say, well, you're giving up candy again, or Father Clark, you're giving up ice cream again. Well, yeah, because that's difficult for me to do. Giving that up is a denial of myself. And every time I, want to go to the freezer and eat that ice cream. Oh no. And so maybe it could be a time where that you instead you spend a time in prayer. And I think prayer, it doesn't have to be where you're praying. Not everybody's called to be a monk. And, but I think Lent calls for a certain period of prayer each day. God doesn't necessarily expect that you're going to be able to pray an hour a day if you can. And many of our Catholics and especially I think our clergy and also people in religious life or in third orders spend that hour of prayer a day, maybe even a holy hour in front of the Blessed Sacrament. And, that's something that if you could do that, then that's great. But, a lot of people can't do that with a work schedule and in the family. But a period of time, a day that is set aside in the morning or in the evening, or it could be in the afternoon that, God doesn't need a lot of time to speak to you. A little bit of prayer goes. It's not really about the quantity as much as it is the quality. It's kind of like to use a food analogy. I sometimes say at a buffet, there's a lot of food there. There's a lot of food. People say, well, there's a lot of food there, but it's kind of low quality. Not everything is good. So I know for me, I have my certain things that I like, and I pick those, and they're the only things that I eat. Buffet has quantity, but not always quality. The smaller a buffet is, and the more quality. It's kind of like, I think in prayer, it doesn't have to be quantitative. But I say, hey, my first hours or my first minutes of the day or hour is going to be dedicated and given to God. Or the last minutes of the day during this Lenten season, 10, 20 minutes is going to be given to God.
We've unfortunately run out of time, but if you'd like to hear the rest of this episode, you can listen to us anytime on Spotify under Candid Catholic Convos, or you can download this episode from our website at hbgdiocese.org. Thank you so much for listening. Our goal at the Diocese of Harrisburg is to walk with you on your faith journey. So if this episode resonated with you in any way, the easiest way to show your appreciation is by sharing this program with your network or by leaving a review on your listening platform. You can also support us financially by making a donation online at hbgdiocese.org/DAC and clicking the Make a Donation button. Thanks again, and we'll see you at church on Sunday.